Previously on Sacksonville Abbey, the Jaguars discover their quarterback Lord Bortles is a truly magnificent specimen. His innate talents of turning into expectorant relish in the ball becoming the equivalent of phlegm against those rustic Texans. Defeat snagged from victory in a most embarrassing way. This on-field buggery leads to most certain dramatics in the locker room as former lovers bout in the public eye. With the season all but undone by failure, the need to put on their big boy trousers is paramount. I'm Richard Shittenborough, and this is Sacksonville Abbey.
Funding for Sacksonville Abbey was provided by
the Drunk Yinzer Foundation, the Bortle Meme Group, Dave Roberts Over Management Consultants,
and by
the world-famous Jameis Baking Company.
Sacksonville Abbey contains adult themes and situations. This program is not intended for children without adult supervision. Viewer discretion is advised, though it will likely be completely ignored.
Duval, a kingdom in turmoil, Lord Bortles undone by weeks of scandal. In this his time of need, the Earl of Bologna Sandwich maintains steadfast in his support for his embattled regent, despite his propensity for unsightly droppings. The Jaguars are not in interest for the solicitation of a new quarterback. Jacksonville has their first mate as the ship is bombarded by the Spanish Armada. This week's contest takes them to beautiful London, the home that the NFL has been forcing them upon for roughly the past half-decade. The change in scenery is sure to do wonders for the boys, as drama has followed them everywhere stateside. A few of the elite Sacksonville Defensive Brigade choose to take a holiday on the town the night before the game. Truly men of discipline and preparation. The boys have a grand old time. Bottle service, a private loft, probable women by the score. As the Jags prepare to retire to their abode, they are confronted. They had not paid their bill of £50,000. Turns out they believed their high-end liquor bottles would be comped and on the house, because restaurants and bars are only here to serve the lordship, not make a profit. A heated skirmish between two factions breaks out with fisticuffs aplenty. As the town guard is brought in to bring the men down, 4 members of Jaguars royalty are arrested and sent to the tower for the night. The Earl of Bologna Sandwich will bring matters in internally, most likely resulting in a stern undressing and a slap on the bum. Break to Wembley, the boys are welcomed home like a disgraced English football team after taking the piss in another World Cup. The soaring Eagles are cheered by the lot, but are facing their own calamity. The Philadelphians would have flowered on their own soil by Cam Newton and his Panthers by fumbling the lot in the fourth quarter. Both teams need a win. Despite a fresh arrival from the factory of sadness in Lord Hyde, the Jaguars are content with Lord Bortles handling the ball at every turn. The offense responds by going nowhere for most of the game. Living up to Count Peterson's boast, the Eagles played with no pressure and dominated the vaunted Sacksonville defense. That boastful bunch, their haughty ways in the shit as they were outmaneuvered on the battlefield. The Jaguars still have a chance of returning to form, though. Lord Bortles has somehow overcome his consumption and is holding on to the ball. In this, his final drive, let us witness the master do his work.
Bortles flips it out incomplete.
Lovely. Another chapter has been written as Sacksonville loses their 4th straight game. As the flying bird Seaton may be saved, Duval falls further into chaos. A year once filled with hope has taken a turn for the worse. Despite doing nothing, Lord Bortles has been given a vote of confidence. He shall live another day. The bye week to lick their wounds couldn't have come fast enough. As always, thank you for watching Sacksonville Abbey, and pray this phony accent never returns to one of these videos again. Cheers! Please remember to pray for Lord Bortles tonight, as he was heinously assaulted by that ruffian Nigel Bradham in the game last week. Refs are truly taking the piss, aren't they? Last time on Sacksonville Abbey, these young band of ruffians were led to the knackers by the tired old steeds in Indianapolis town. Chef Ramsay served up a glorious bag of manure for himself to consume. A man whom he called a substandard quarterback raised his defenses for several key plays. This is what we call karma, children. A display of abysmal play topped off by Lord Bortles handing his deadly coughing fit to one of their young wide receivers. The Jaguars' once promising season now hanging in a precarious balance between ledge and chasm. I'm Richard Shittenborough, and this is Sacksonville Abbey.
Funding for Sacksonville Abbey is provided by
the Church of Carson Wentz of Latter-Down Receivers, the Meadowlands Butt Fumble Society, Antonio Brown Street Racing and Premium Throwing Furniture.
And by
Aaron Rodgers Rectal Extraction Associates.
further funding for Sacksonville Abbey was provided by the Corporation for Public Shitposting and by monthly financial support from sports ball viewers like you. Thank you, you weirdos.
This week, on Days of Our Steelers, a message arrives from the prodigal son. Nothing. The decision regarding Le'Veon Bell's immediate future was awaited with a combination of dread and a desire to get it over with. Bell played his final card by moving back to the Steel City and competing in a spirited game of pickup basketball. Despite these moves hinting towards a return, Tuesday's deadline came and went without the running back arriving to the team's headquarters. Le'Veon Bell will not be a Steeler this season. Captain Fatfuck attempted to contact him before the deadline passed. The only response was in silence. What was once thought of as a temporary standoff has now turned into a total loss. Le'Veon has not only angered the Steelers' faithful, but those that pissed away a top draft pick on him in fantasy leagues. He has gambled on having a bad team throw a shitload of money at him in free agency. Whether it succeeds or not is to be determined. At this point, good fucking riddance. The players themselves almost feel a sigh of relief at this conclusion. The Black and Gold Brigade can now focus on what's important to them. Raiding his locker of all valuables. A team-bonding and professional move if there ever was one. The Twitter terrorizer Bud Dupree imitated a true pirate and took a sleek pair of Jordans. Perhaps they can see a backfield this season, unlike Le'Veon. Some may say this is a bad look for an organization rife in drama, but this was apparently lighthearted and therapeutic for them. The team will call it a situation where boys will be boys and do nothing about it. Meanwhile, Duval, a land under siege by the forces of failure. As the sun sets and their hopes fade to black, there is no more room for error. With a fiercely challenging opponent on the horizon, it is easier said than done. Chef Ramsay has taken a thick lashing thanks to his open proclamations outside the square. Little does our Michelin star maestro understand the golden rule of shitposting. You talk shit, you get hit. Ramsay may be a star in the culinary world, but he has had a hard time accepting responsibility for his actions. The head of the Sacksonville Battalion has pointed his cannons at the viewing public. The Jaguars have been betrayed. The peasantry have become fickle. They need to be put in their place. He feels that the fans are going to miss them when the Abbey becomes a vassal again. A most surefire way to bring the world to your side. The leaders of Jacksonville ponder the next course of action. Perhaps it involves a transfer of Chef Ramsay to a new estate, giving up their best defensive playmaker for reasons of a non-existent culture. These are men of nobility. The rules of the house must be maintained. In this next affair, the Black and Gold Brigade takes on a new thorn. Jacksonville. The humiliation suffered at their hands last season is not forgotten. Despite being their kryptonite, the Jaguars are deep in their own turmoil, losing their last 5 in brutal fashion. As the boys anticipate a team they had bested and soon imitated, the importance for victory is greater than ever. One more loss may all but take them out of the playoff hunt completely. The beginnings of this game lead to a familiar script, the Steelers being completely unprepared for their opponent. Would you call this playing down to their competition? I mean, Fournette is back to full strength. The Lords of Duval start out with a promising run of form, but there is a massive hitch to their plans. The offensive push is sluggish. Lord Bortles is once again imitating a professional quarterback. Despite a return of brilliance by Leonard, the 4 of nets, what should be touchdowns are only field goals. Regardless of their sheer domination on the ledger, they only boast a 9-point advantage to show for it. There is literally no other way to describe this game than sheer ugliness. Captain Fatfuck looked completely out of sync, the running game stuffed at every turn, and the defense showing holes, being unable to stop Leonard Fournette. The Steelers need to get their act together and quickly. The lingering fear of losing keeps in the mind of Sacksonville's faithful. As the Jaguars continue to take penalty after penalty, the Steelers' offense plays right into the hands of the defense. Big Ben atoned for his sins as he gave them presence on a consistent basis. Roethlisberger malfunctioned as his robotic exoskeleton proceeded to glitch out. His passes missed like the courting of Stormy Daniels. At least until one big pass to the Diva to give them life. The Jaguars tried their damnedest to hold a wall despite a terrible Pittsburgh offense, but the dam eventually broke to a deep gash by Antonio Brown. Even Chef Ramsay can only stop and stare as the village is poisoned. In these terrible times, we can only rely on high-end talent to hopefully bail them out of an awful situation. The Jacksonville play calling did their best to help, proceeding to do absolutely nothing every play.
Under the trusty stewardship of Lord Bottles, the Sacksonville attack provided incredibly timid responses. Ridiculously predictable play calling that the Steelers saw coming like the Queen. God save her if she had to witness this abomination.
The Jaguars did everything in their power to hand the Steelers an undeserved victory.
The heads of Duval became complacent as they chose to let their vaunted defense try and stop the oncoming attackers over and over again. It was only a matter of time before they would manage to break through. It is only a 10-point advantage, easily surmountable.
As the defense did their part by sitting around and letting Jacksonville stumble over themselves, Captain Fatfuck was reprogrammed and given a healthy dosage of painkillers. Those drugs are like spinach to Popeye. It grants him superpowers.
It's almost as if the Jaguars are being run by Douglas Haig, doing the same thing expecting a different result every time. Perhaps they should have learned from Einstein. Unsurprisingly, the Steelers were able to break through their so-called impenetrable lines. The populace grows wrought with concern.
The Steelers have come back into the game, but a fourth down needs to be converted.
Oh my God, Connor, you've got to catch that shit!
The reinforcements managed to hold the line. Perhaps the offense can do something. Oh right, they fell to shit once again. Because it's the Jaguars and they are arrogant and feel they can do no wrong.
Thank God Jacksonville doesn't have a real quarterback.
As Pittsburgh prepares for another attack, there may not be enough in the tank for the defense to stop them.
There wasn't. The Steelers marched down the field once again for another touchdown. All hail the Vanimal.
Throughout the land, the serfdom is being sacrificed as cannon fodder to prevent their seemingly inevitable defeat. The Jaguars have to do something. The offense needs to do its job.
What the fuck are you doing, Jacksonville? You've been running the same plays all quarter.
Lord Bortles and the offense were proven incompetent again.
Big Ben reached back and pulled out another trusty bailout from his back pocket.
The writing is all but on the wall now. Petty, I figured this would be the turning point.
Oh my God, Connor, you've got to catch that shit!
The battering rams are at the gate. The doors are being pushed open. They have come to slay the king.
Running like an option, gonna keep it, dives! Did he break it? Yes, he did!
They won? What?
The collapse is complete.
How the fuck did they win? The Jags should have beaten our asses handily.
The Lords of Duval have turned out to be frauds.
I have never seen a team as incompetent as Jacksonville was.
Their stronghold conquered by a team they had dominated all day.
4 straight 3-and-outs, over 100 yards in penalties? It's not even an effort thing, the Steelers barely had to fucking try.
Complete and utter humiliation.
For God's sake, ask Madden could have called a better game than the Jags did.
The Jaguars defeated themselves.
I mean, I know Bortles sucks, but holy shit, throw some screens, run play action, rollouts, give Fournette some room to fucking breathe.
With this latest batch of incompetence, the season is all but dead.
I feel the same way I did after that wildcard game against the Bengals. My jaw has hit the floor.
Of course, Duval will fail to identify the real problems with the squad and blame the defense for this defeat. It's in no way Lord Bortles' fault, even though they don't trust him to throw a football.
I'm honestly counting this one as a loss. The Steelers won't, but they had no business of winning this one. Take the money and run, boys.
The serfdom is about to rebel. 6 straight losses. A locker room in chaos. Uninspired leadership. The descent back to mockery is beginning. If you'll excuse me, I have to pack my things as the torches are starting to appear before the Abbey. Cheers. Previously on Sacksonville Abbey, a new nadir was reached as the kingdom had a game they all but won. Keyword here is but. The Jaguars prolapsed amongst themselves with some of the most inept offensive play calling this side of Passchendaele. A no man's land where the meat shields were simply chucked onto the enemy as Lord Bortles did nothing but take sacks. As the offense does nothing, the defense grew exhausted and fell apart. The Steelers escape with a win thanks to Jacksonville beating themselves. With 6 straight losses, the only hope is trying to patch the leak on this old dinghy. I'm Richard Schittenborough, and this is Sacksonville Abbey.
Funding for Sacksonville Abbey is provided by
Tank Maintenance Workers of America, Local 283, College Station Toilet Sinks, the Cleveland Relevance Experience,
and by
Yinzer Anger Management of Greater Pittsburgh.
Further funding for Sacksonville Abbey is made possible by the Corporation for Public Shitposting and by the monthly financial support from sports ball viewers like you. Thank you. Bloody hell, these people could spend money on anything, won't they?
Duval, once an epicenter of hope, now being raided by barbarians at the gates. The boys reel after their fateful defeat, trying to find answers for their change in fortune. Despite this panic, Lord Bortles will be given full confidence to lead the charge. After all, he hasn't thrown an interception in 4 games. See, there is some silver lining in this terrible stretch after all. This next opponent is the closest thing to a team of amateurs on the pitch. The Bills of Buffalo. If you may recall, the Jaguars defeated this squad in their first appearance in the playoffs this millennium. Chef Ramsay putting the garnish on the plate with a climactic interception. What beautiful times those were for the lads. This year there will be no postseason for their inferior team. They boast all of nothing. They've started quarterback somehow worse than Lord Bortles. Buffalo now turns back to a rookie coming out of the infirmary. Josh Allen, a man whom Chef Ramsay mentioned by name in his infamous tirades. There was only one word he repeatedly called him. Trash. Rubbish not meant for a can, let alone a field. This is as easy as a chance to win as they will get. The boys from Duval proceed to continue with their inevitable collapsing, giving up 2 important scores to start off the game, including a 75-yard scamper. The main suspect in this exposure, none other than the culinary Gabba himself. Once again, glorious karma strikes its targets with precision. In the meantime, the Jaguars even the score thanks to the brilliant play from Leonard, the 4 of nets. His mastery of the pigskin liar tells tales of touchdowns scored and the loads carried on his back. They even let Lord Bortles unleash the cannon, as he throws yet another interception. What a giving spirit. As halftime approaches, Chef Ramsay still hasn't learned to shut the hell up and proceeds to call several Bills players trash when they are tied. And once down by 14. Perhaps you should call yourself such a one after your atrocious play this half, Jalen. They fail to understand this situation once again, more content with talking metric heaps of shit instead of focusing on their play. Perhaps it could have prevented this freefall after their Super Bowl victory against New England in Week 2. But there is hope. The Jaguars are marching down the field as Lord Bortles manages to somehow fire a pass accurately. Jacksonville was going to claim a victory. In fisticuffs. Leading the charge into melee was none other than Leonard, the 4 of Nance. A man who wasn't even on for the play, brawling with a Buffalonian as the wide receiver and defender experience a program crash and fail to respond to commands. This ego-affirming action only blesses the Jags with an ejection of their best offensive player. Once again, men who have the right prize in mind. With the ball at the 1-yard line, they must resort to Lord Hyde, who is stuffed like a turkey. After another full-star penalty, Lord Bortles finds the promised land. A tragic defeat as the offensive line suffers yet another penalty. Well done, chaps. Lord Bortles continues to celebrate by taking roughly his 34th sack of the season. What instinct to cower before your enemies. The coup de grace, another Lambona by their kicker. He seems to have some San Diego still in his veins after all. This is #Sacksonville season. A free shot to glory at the 1-yard line, then proceeding to flail and whiff into a state of calamity. All the meanwhile, they will ignore it and continue to think they are God's gift to this earth. Is it to wonder why that trash quarterback rummaged your defenses for another touchdown? I'd be shocked if this was the formula to success anywhere, let alone a prestigious Abbey. Panic has set in, but Lord Bortles has foolishly brought the game into his hands. I wonder how this will go.
Bortles play action, pass deflected. Was it picked?
Most exquisite form by the receiver in that interception. Truly the leadership this team needs in the future. This would be the heartless dagger to their season. The boys from Duval pissed away what should have been a decisive victory to one of the worst teams in the league. The Jaguars have hit rock bottom. As they celebrated their victories and hype, the Abbey has lost 8 of 9 games. There is no time for mourning but for retribution. The tension throughout the locker room is at a breaking point. It is certain that there are men that will not survive into the spring. Winter is coming, and it will be a red one. After supper time, Colonel Nathaniel Hackett is summoned into the head chambers. Hackett, the head of the offensive battalion, believed he was going to discuss a change of quarterback. As he enters the room, the doors lock behind him. He had been set up by his superiors. Colonel Hackett was deposed with a cold blood. His failure to perform cost him his life. The football gods care not for the weak. With the stakes now higher than ever, the Abbey is on edge. Who would be next to suffer such a punishment? Perhaps it would be Lord Bortles after a stint in the tower. Maybe it's the beleaguered Earl of Bologna's sandwich. Would Father Coughlin be spared of such a fate? Or do they scapegoat Chef Ramsay and his boisterous mouth? The upheaval has just begun. Jacksonville will never be the same. Cheers. Previously on Sacksonville Abbey. Contrary to a totally inept offensive force eager to give away the game, the hashtag Sacksonville defense managed to show up for once in their damn lives. The Colts of Indianapolis Town were too eager to go for the jugular instead of gently caress their prey. The result for them is a potential death blow to their playoff ambitions. As for the Jaguars, despite this stunning victory, it is all but too late. The inevitable awaits them. I'm Richard Shittenborough, and this is Sacksonville Abbey.
Funding for this special edition of Sacksonville Abbey was provided by
Jason Witten, Playoff Photography, Mahomes Vocal Talent Agency,
and by
Days of Our Steelers International Fan Club.
Further funding for Sacksonville Abbey was made possible by the Corporation for Public Shitposting and by the monthly financial support from sports ball viewers like you. Thank you. Oh, these lads are truly buggered, aren't they?
Duval, where morale is as bleak as the impending winter of discontent and uncertainty. The Jaguars are in a daze. There is nothing to really play for anymore except their lives. They witnessed what happened to Lord Bortle, stripped of his title and banished to the Tower to toil until his trial for crimes against decency. The only thing lingering in the Abbey's residents' mind is who would be next. An audition for survival would begin in the land of the liars as they travel to Nashville and face the Titans. Unlike the Jaguars, they have everything to gain from victory. After squandering several opportunities over the past few weeks, they won thanks to some impressive butt fumbling over the Jets. They would be looking to prove their doubters wrong. Early on, the Titans marched down the field, but the Jaguars would be allowed a chance to compete. Hilarious hijinks ensued as the Titan returner muffles the punt and runs into his own end zone for a safety. This will most likely result in a hasty trial and execution after the game for him. Jacksonville's offense, led by Kessler the Hessian, is somehow gaining momentum. They are a runaway train running down the track, preparing to crash into unsuspecting travelers eager to start their holiday. Despite this good fortune, the train is derailed before the station. The heinously conservative play calling is now carelessly bold. Even with a return from Leonard the Four of Nets, the Jaguars are halted at the opposition's goal line. At least the vaunted Sacksonville defense could put a stop to King Henry the 22nd as he crushes any lingering hopes surviving. Look at how the boys fail to perform the basic techniques of tackling as he storms the length of the field for a 99-yard rumble. The horns had sounded throughout Tennessee's kingdom. A festival was to commence. A massacre of Jaguars was about to begin. Despite the game being relatively early in play, Jacksonville had all but given up. Such an incredible lack of fucks given that I wouldn't be shocked if they were all executed for desertion on the field of play. The only thing that would be coming home is shame. Even as they are destroyed, Chef Ramsay attempts to talk more shit, and then flop like the team has all season. Perhaps Jalen should consider a career change. He would make a fine mint in the Premier League. As the Titans serfdom celebrates their routing deep into the night with heroic feats from King Henry the 22nd, the Jaguars only experience closure. Another humiliating defeat in a season of incredible disappointment. It's been known for weeks, but is now official. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been eliminated from the playoffs. A season once filled with incredible promise and riches beyond their wildest dreams taken away by their own doing. This is a lost season where the only thing gained was their return to being the AFC's forgotten lol cow. The failed harvest will lead to a spectacular famine in wintertime. Desperation will be renewed. The tables have turned. The shit-talkers will be eating nothing but it. As the year draws to a close, we can only hope the turmoil is brief and minuscule. Nobody is safe, not even the people that put together this program. Thus, as Sacksonville Abbey closes its doors, maybe for good, the only mood is dark.